Ah, perfect.
Recording.
Sean did it as the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain already did it. All right, so we'll get started with just an intro. I know people are probably going to file in as we start, but this will be recorded and then put on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well. It's also streaming live on YouTube right now. So thank you everyone for joining. This is a forum that has been requested by people from across the district. I know these are topics that a lot of people have been. It is a topic that people have been feeling very closely for the last 12 months, and we want to give a platform for people to share their experiences. I know we're as a board and everyone on the dais here, we have some to offer, and we're going to start. Mr. Joe DeBold is going to give a presentation that outlines some of the district's efforts so far this year, and just where the parameters of this discussion really are. And we want to open up the conversation after that to get some of your input as well. And I just want to, again, remind everybody that we want people to feel free to offer their own experiences. Just understand that we want to keep this conversation at a level of, talking about the different themes that we're all managing. We don't want to get too into the weeds about individual cases, though. Just because this is a public forum, we do encourage you to follow up with school staff afterwards if there are specific cases that you feel like you need further assistance with, and we would be happy to give you those resources after the forum if you reach out directly. So for now, I want to pass it off to Mr. DeBold, who's going to provide a presentation. You can expect this to be about 15 minutes. So, if you want to share your experiences afterwards, that's about the timeline that we're dealing with. All right, Joe.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Try to keep this brief, but again, it's basically let me just see, host disabled participant screen sharing. So I think, is Sean there? I just want to make sure, because I figured that might happen.
There you go. You're now a co-host.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to make sure I can share my screen here. Okay. So just give me a thumbs up if you can kind of see. All right. Perfect. All right. So this pandemic that we all have kind of been facing, the one thing that a statement that's kind of gone around is, we're all in this together. But I think the one thing that I want to make sure that the public realizes is that it's the saying that I'm sure people have heard it. It's we're facing the same storm, but we may not be necessarily in the same boat. So that's something that I want to make sure is like the theme here, because it is different for a lot of different people, but everybody's experiencing some sort of storm. So as I go through here, so number one, I think to realize, and I think it's pretty obvious, the face-to-face reduction, which is our genuine connections, has been reduced dramatically. In a normal school year, we see students in person approximately 180 days out of a 365-day year. For this year, we're on pace for about 72 days of in-person instruction out of a 365-day year. So that's approximately 20% of the year. This number is less for quarantine exposures and our medically remote population. Again, we're talking about in person. This shift definitely has led to stress for families and less reach for our staff. Again, it's almost like working and operating on a Saturday or during the summer in terms of reach for our staff, because it's just when you don't have them there face to face, it's a little less genuine. And what we want to do is get back to the genuine connections of that face to face, that in person. So that has been our goal, is increase the reach, get our students back safely to our buildings, and therefore increasing our efforts at the same time, reducing the family stress. So this is directly from the CDC and from their website regarding updated guidance. It says, given the crucial services school offers and the benefits of in-person learning, it's critical for K through 12 schools to open and remain open for in-person instruction as safely and as soon as possible. So it talks about that. And I just want to make sure I pointed that out, because again, we all know the benefits of in-person learning, kind of getting back to that normalcy is everything. When you talk to students, that is their number one thing that they say. I just want to be back in person. I just want to be back kind of to normal. And I think we all can agree with that. So this little graphic is from the pandemic parenting webinar that was released to the district a couple weeks ago. And I just like this graphic because it really does represent kind of what this pandemic has done. And then, kind of the medical footprint versus the psychological footprint. So again, it says it's an unprecedented and unrelenting disaster. Disaster is a key word because this has been a disaster for a lot of different families. Loss of income, loss of loved ones. And again, the psychological footprint heavily outweighs the medical footprint here. And it's not even a Cornwall issue. It's not a New York State thing. This is a global issue. So it talks about a lot of different things about the features of a pandemic. Not really going to get into it too much, but again, that graphic represents kind of the realities that we're facing as a school support staff. So this right here is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you guys, for those of you that know what it is, for those of you that don't, basically what it represents is that the bottom base level needs need to be met before you can go up to any other needs right here. Pre-COVID-19, our school support staff was working kind of in this general area right here. So into psychological needs of students, self-fulfillment needs, we're working on self-esteem, social issues, things like that. Did we have safety needs or physiological needs? Sure, we definitely had a smattering of that we worked with, but mainly we worked in this kind of area right here. During COVID, our needs focus got shifted dramatically. We had families that lost income. We had families that were hospitalized and sick. We had to figure out for a lot of families when their next meal came into play. So we set up coordination of meals, delivery of all those things. We talk about safety needs. We talk about safety in terms of like people feeling safe about being in school. A lot of the planning that our school support staff did was around scheduling, around classes, and how do we support our students safely if we are going to bring them back in. You talk about, as we broach the subject about belongingness and love needs, how many heartbreaking emails I received over the summer that said, my child is in cohort 2, but their friends are in cohort 1. Is there any opportunity, so on and so forth. We knew because of safety, we really couldn't make those, choices or those decisions sometimes. And it really, really broke our heart because that's their social lifeline. But because of safety, because of management issues, we knew because we needed to open school, we couldn't do those sometimes. And like I said, it's devastating. Every time though, also, if we oscillated into here, where we had some social kind of, gatherings and, social kind of activities, students felt like, okay, things are good, a quarantine might happen or things like that. So again, we then defaulted or went right back down to safety needs. Those are parameters that are put in place by Orange County Department of Health for us as a school. So again, pre-COVID, we were up here. During COVID, we're down here and we're kind of working our way up again. But again, I just want to make sure that that perspective is kind of there. Again, another graphic from that pandemic parenting night that I really, really did like is this. Right now, we seem to be kind of in this disillusionment and reconstruction. We're kind of in between. As you can see where the trigger events are occurring, those could be quarantines. Those could be like somebody getting ill. Those could be the disappointment of like, nope, that's canceled. You can't do that. Kids have experienced that all throughout this year. And it's been really, really tough. So a lot of the counseling that we've done with our students has been about this grief because they are in real time experiencing loss, processing at the same exact time, and then having another loss potentially happening immediately following that. So we have been working with our students with intensive, kind of grief counseling. One thing that I just want to show is during this disillusionment phase, this kind of talks about right here is optimism turns to discouragement and stress continues to take a toll. Negative reactions such as physical exhaustion or substance abuse may begin to surface. That is true. That is something that we are definitely facing. That is something that we are facing, not with just students, but with families. Because as this pandemic rages on, as it, people think in their heads, I think there was an end time limit to this, or this should be over by now. The reality is it's not. So, there basically is this disillusionment that I believe is happening. I definitely think that we are kind of getting out of it with the opening of schools, the return of activities, things like that. But again, this has been something that we have been managing because in the beginning, once you had a triage handle on things, now other things start to come and unearth. More people that didn't need help before now are needing help more than ever. So this reconstruction phase, again, individuals and communities begin to assume responsibility for rebuilding their lives, and people adjust to a new normal while continuing to grieve losses. That last statement right there, the grieve losses, is key, because we have, I mean, just case in point, our senior class, they continue to grieve losses of different things. They are getting things back, but they are also trying to manage that, in their mind, preparing themselves for another setback. Mentally, that is definitely devastating, for students. But these were the critical events supported by our schools when the pandemic raged in March of 2020, even until now. You talk about delivery and coordination of meals, clothing, or technology to families in need. Technology sometimes is a lifeline. And when you talk about SEL, that was the only connection that a student maybe on medical remote had with their school, with their peers, with their teachers. So that was definitely key. Sudden employment loss by one or both parents, student and family member hospitalizations. We are still experiencing that. Death of loved ones, whether that was due to COVID or not. Sometimes it was, I can't see my grandmother who's in a nursing home. And she's not, didn't pass away from COVID, but I just wanted to, say goodbye or, do something, can't do it. Mental health hospitalizations. We have had a large increase of mental health hospitalizations. Again, two sides to look at that. One is, we have captured them. We are getting them the resources they need. But the other part of it is that, yes, it's a reality of what's going on. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of isolation that our students are experiencing. So those hospitalizations take up a large portion of time and resources to make sure that that student gets what they need and they can transition back, in a healthy manner. Substance abuse, like I said, it's not just with students, it's also with families. With this pandemic, it's definitely brought about, a lot of free time, again, loss of income, things like that, has led to a little bit of despair. Child protective service cases has gone through the roof because schools were safe havens for a lot of students. Being home more may not be the best thing in the world for some people. So again, going back to that statement, we're all in the same storm, not necessarily in the same boat. For some people, being home is awesome. I get to be home with my family, my dog, and everything's great. And some people, it is absolutely not. It is the exact opposite. So the CPS cases have gone up tremendously. Resource connection for those in crisis from day one. We provided our community with resources to help with basic needs, to psychosocial support. We had a whole spreadsheet with links, resources, numbers, and we continue to do that as needed. We had disconnected or ghost students. So one thing I want to point out is, as a district, we opened up in September. Even though it was a hybrid schedule, we still opened up, so we had a little face-to-face time. We got our claws into some students. Did we still have some disconnected or kind of what we call ghost students? Yep, absolutely. A lot of those students, though, when we found out, when we did a welfare check with them, some of those students had to watch siblings, so they just could not patch into their classes. Others, decided, okay, maybe I'll work because I can't do this whole balance of thing and our family needs money. And some of them, because of the loss of income, their families just up and moved. So we had a lot of those students that we had to do welfare checks on. And obviously our one-to-one counseling for students in need, whether that is through Zoom or Google Meet or in person, has increased tenfold. So the frustration shared, I mean, this is something that I just want to make sure, that, everybody fully understands. This is something that I think that we all can agree is very frustrating. The quarantines that we've had, Orange County Department of Health regulations that we have to abide by, wipe out everybody. So again, if it could be somebody that's on one side of the cafeteria and then someone that's all the way at the other side, it does wipe them out. Other counties around us are doing close contact quarantine. We are still doing proximate. That makes students very wary of these quarantines, and some students have been quarantined. I think the record right now, we have a student at the high school, he's been quarantined 6 times. So he's lost 12 weeks of school in person. So there's a lack of traction. Every time the joke that I have with some of the students is, well, you can figure out our next quarantine when we plan something. Because every time we've planned something, quarantine has happened, and they all kind of joke, but they're all kind of like that, haha, yeah, but it's true. Every time you feel like you got a little groove going, a quarantine happens. So there are students who are very aware of that. We walk the tightrope of delivery of SEL and balancing limited instructional time. We want to make sure that it doesn't induce more stress for students. that they're feeling like they're getting what they need academically. Teachers are feeling like they can do what they need to do with the limited amount of time. And then we have to be creative about how we deliver our SEL, in a normal time, as it is. And then in this time, even more so. This pandemic has been polarizing for our community. There's been differing opinions about a lot of different things. So sometimes it's tough to manage or to know exactly what is needed or wanted or welcomed. So again, it's been a polarizing thing. It's been a little tough to navigate certain kind of, wants or versus needs. But again, that is one thing that we're kind of working through. And I think as things come back, I think it's starting to melt away some of that polarization. Equity issues regarding SEL. Again, we had our medical remote population. We have some in person, and then we have some at home, patching in that are coming every other day. So we had to get very creative about how we could deliver SEL equally to all those student populations. And again, this last one, I want to make sure I really point out, students and families are weighing returning to school to help support their mental health by getting it back to normal, or to stay home to avoid a devastating disappointment due to a quarantine. So that is happening right now. I can't say enough that is something that it's a paradox. In a way, if you ask those students back in September, hey, what if you knew you would come back fully, during this date, they would say, absolutely. But now when you ask those same students, they're like, I don't know, because I don't want to miss out on senior prom. I don't want to miss out on my senior night. I don't want to miss out on the musical. This picture right here says it all. So I took a picture of where we had, again, we create an environment of SEL in our schools, and I'll show you more pictures, in other buildings. But this one right here, I think spoke volumes. It's theater in our schools, and it says theater transform my life by, and you can see all the things that it says right there. So one of them that really stuck out to me was taking away all my worries right here. That one right there really spoke to me because, again, we all know that the specials, the clubs, the activities, the things that kids love and passionate about were missing in their lives. When they started to come back little by little, the happiness came back tremendously for these students. So that is something, though, that, again, they are weighing in their minds. Some of them are saying, well, if I come back, am I going to miss out on the big musical or the big game or this, so on and so forth. So again, they're having this kind of, struggle mentally. And I think a struggle to kind of figure out, is this something that I want to do? But you can see clearly how passionate and how much that these things mean to these students. So I'm very happy that we are able to get these things back and that we are able to, open up our schools despite, their nerves and everything like that. Because again, when I walk out of the building and I see that activity, it's amazing. And you can see the laughter, you can see the smiles, you can see all those things that really mean a lot to these students. So just to talk about SEL as a support staff in a school setting, we operate under the American School Counselor Association domains of academic, college and career, and social emotional. They're intertwined. They do not operate in a vacuum. So for instance, if you want to help students academically, you need to teach them social emotional skills about how to deal with, difficult subjects. How do you have that grit? How do you have that determination to power through? And because you're supporting that, you're supporting their academics. Now you're supporting their college and career. And it just kind of goes round and round. So again, the task that we had was also, let's create normalcy and opportunity in their academics and college and career. And that will help them with their social emotional standpoint, because again, now they're looking at it from a perspective of, okay, we're back to normal a little bit, so on and so forth. I can't tell you how many times a lot of schools did not offer the PSAT this fall. We were able to do it because we said it's important for our kids. We put a lot of parameters in place, a lot of safety, parameters. So our kids felt that they checked that off. They feel less anxious, and they're going to feel more prepared next year and when they have to actually take their tests. So some of the things, and again, I want to make sure that, again, I mentioned that it's some, just in the interest of time. For elementary SEL, mindfulness activities are going on. Google Classroom SEL activities, classroom presentations. And again, I want to make sure I point this out. One of and I'll mention it later, is the Castle 5 domains. Self-management always is pretty high. Self-management deals with, your anxiety, your management of your emotions, things like that. That always registered pretty high in terms of a need. So what we've done is we've launched a lot of mindfulness activities for the elementaries and all those SEL activities that deal with managing your emotions, impulse control, thing like that. Monthly character traits go on through the elementary buildings. There's the backpack food program. And again, why I'm highlighting that is because that program has increased dramatically, because of COVID. Holiday meals and gifts delivery, again, increased dramatically. So on any given year, if you had X amount of families, you probably got to multiply that by 5. A lot of generous people in this community. We really, really did pull together. So we were able to do, give that out for most families. Coping strategies, again, dealing with stress, anxiety, things like that. Spirit groups for medically remote students. So we had different groups. We had spirit captains that met with the group, the medically remote students, and made sure that they were connected. A virtual reading program, and that was started by our high school students here, just reading to the students over the summer, just avoiding that summer melt of getting that connection, and creating that connection where when they did come back to school, whatever way that it looked, that they had familiar faces. Middle school SEL, mindfulness activities through Brain Pop. It's these small little video clips that the students love to look at. They're short, really good that the students definitely love them. There's messaging activities through it. Meditation practice. They go into the classrooms and do a little slight meditation practice about how you can breathe, help them before they're going to take a major test, something like that. Google Classroom for SEL. Some of the students are signed up for that. They do just kind of lighthearted activities, connection activities. Counselors go to do self-care presentations. Spirit Committee, same as in the elementary, building. Great Kindness Challenge, Red Ribbon Week, Foreign Language Week to support kind of that multicultural, aspect of SEL and, respecting differences and having empathy. High school SEL. So we talked about our community service initiative. The students that participate in it really get a lot out of it instead of just, the hours and, this looks good on my resume. They actually say, I feel like I'm making a difference. I'm helping. I'm part of something bigger. The class rank change that we made, that's a macro level SEL. We got rid of our very cutthroat step on each other class rank system. We moved it to a tier system. We got rid of a lot of anxiety for our students because now they can showcase themselves without fear of, a fractional point setting them apart. So we're very, very proud that we saw that through, even through the pandemic. Cultural Connections Group. This organization is going to really go places because the expansion or the lofty goals that we have is that this group of students is through the foreign language classes. They meet with our ENL students. They connect with them as mentors. The ENL students also teach them how to say their language in a more appropriate manner. So it's kind of like this symbiotic relationship. What then those students become are ambassadors to reach down to the lower level buildings. So that's something that we're very proud of. It's SEL in nature. The virtual reading program, which I just mentioned, Destination Day program, our seniors are going to be wearing their destination on May 4th. Basically, the expansion of that program is not just taking pictures of them and being proud, even though we love doing that. The expansion of that program is that these students are going to speak with our middle school and elementary students and talk to them about what they've gone through, like, the struggles that they've gone through, how they got to where they are today, like saying to the students, I've been in your shoes. Here's some advice. Here's some good things that you can do. And the kids really get a kick out of like, you had Mrs. So-and-so. And they're like, yes, I did have Mrs. So-and-so. So they're very shocked by that. But the orientation for medical remote students, we had a really nice transition for the medical remote students where they got to see teachers face-to-face, ask questions. We have spirit captains for the medical remote students as well. The Google one-to-one appointments or the face-to-face appointments, I have to say, that's the one thing that I have seen that has happened tremendously as scheduling is going on. We talk about SEL. They give the students the option. Do you want the Google Meet or do you want to meet in person? The students 98% of the time are like, I would like to meet in person. They are done with Google and Zoom. So they are kind of like, yeah, I need that human connection. And it's been a slow go scheduling, but I kind of told the counselors because they were worried. I said, that's okay. Meet with them, take the time. And then we also do Mindful Mondays here with our staff and also with our students here. So this is just a peek inside. I just wanted to make sure I showed this because again, parents have not been able to get in the building. And I know that's like a loss because of COVID and everything like that. So just wanted to show a few pictures about how we make the environment SEL in nature. I know the teachers are absolutely fantastic about making a welcoming environment. Our social workers, our school counselors, our psychologists, everybody does a great job about making things look great. And we obviously have our college, acceptances. We do all of our celebrations. We have our mental health, lines, text for teens, all the way through, in our middle school and our high school buildings. And again, we want to also mention this, that pre-COVID and even during, the building blocks that were in motion, when I came on board here, was to really get this district on common language. So we want to talk about, it's the CASEL 5 competencies. CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. They have 5 competencies. So instead of teachers and students or anybody talking about 100 different terms, anxiety, depression, now you talk about it in one category. So again, when someone tells me that someone's anxious or they're impulsive, I say, so that's self-management. So now we need to work on self-management. So again, common language was key. So we needed to make sure everybody was up on that. Google Classroom SEL Labs, that is through K through 12. All teachers and staff have access to this. It's a resource sharing Google Classroom. So they almost share resources to say, this is what worked for me. This is what didn't work. Here's a video clip I found on this. So it's a resource sharing site. They all have access to it and they share lots of curriculum right there. There's teacher-led professional development. We had a student or a teacher at Willow Avenue lead a professional development for any staff that wanted to on mindfulness and meditation activities. That was literally right before COVID hit. Professional development for K through 12 SEL committee and staff. Again, another thing that COVID ruined was our trip to Chicago with our committee to go to CASEL's headquarters to get kind of professional development on how we can enhance and deliver our SEL delivery in our district. Our data collection for transitional programs and orientation. So for 8th graders and for our 9th grade transitional program, we do a lot of data collection there to figure out how do we kind of best meet their needs. We also do data collection for targeting our SEL delivery. We did a needs assessment survey in the fall that's families filled out that we are able to use that data and information to help our students, to help our teachers figure out some commonalities with the students. We have done and continue to do faculty presentations regarding SEL, mainly connecting with students and obviously making sure, sorry, I have my timer late, making sure that obviously that nobody is getting missed. So if they do see or sense that students are not themselves or the camera's off, that, we are kind of telling them it could be a couple different things. And one thing to kind of note, some students don't put their camera on, not because they don't want to be engaged with school, but because they're embarrassed by what's behind them. They're embarrassed by their home environment. So we've had to have a little bit of education regarding that. But the teachers, I have to say, have been absolutely fantastic in letting us know, hey, I don't think so-and-so is right, or I think so-and-so is going on. And then that allows us to kind of, enact, what we need to. Community partnerships, we had our coffee meetings going, our committee meetings. That's something that I want to get back to as we kind of get, through the woods of COVID and figuring out the technology and all the different things that we've had to, do. And forums like this to be collaborative and solutions focused. That is kind of where I want to kind of continue doing this. So again, just in summary, this is the common language that, we want to get on as a district. It's self-awareness, the self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Anything that is SEL related can fit under one of these 5 categories. So what we are doing is we're trying to map right now, where can we do it in a classroom setting? Where can we do it where it's our support staff to push in? Where can we do it that is in a more intensive tiered, element? But just more importantly, how do we align it and know that as they come up, what do we want them to know and before they graduate as high school students? So sometimes it's like Covey's book, you have to begin with the end in mind. That causes a lot of professional development to happen. A lot of meeting with people, and again, collaboration with our community. So again, that just in summary, I know I took a little bit more time, but it was very important to just kind of frame that out. So again, we're all in the same storm, but not necessarily the same boat. But again, and I said this kind of earlier today, is even in a normal year, I would still feel like we haven't done enough. And, we want to constantly improve. And I always feel like, again, you always need to sharpen the saw and you always need to improve as a district. So again, I'm looking forward to working with our community. I'm looking forward to working with our faculty and staff on how we really can be the best for our kids. So for that, I'll turn it over to you guys and welcome any questions or any experiences you guys have.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. DeBold. That was phenomenal. We will, for anybody that wants to explore that presentation even further, we'll have that bit shared, recorded and shared on our Facebook page as well. I think there was so much in there, and I hope everybody got some good value out of that. So I want to shift, as Joe mentioned, I want to shift now to accepting some public comment. I'll kick us off myself. Just first to give you a sense of how we'll do this. So obviously, it's just us that are on the quote unquote dais right now. But if you ever want to say something, just raise your hand, literally in the raise hand function in Zoom, and I can bring you into this circle. If you'd rather comment through the chat, you don't want to have your face on camera, totally fine. You can chat your response, and we can read it out loud. As I referenced at the beginning, I do want to be sure. I know that these are very sensitive and personal topics for a lot of people. If you want to get into a more personal discussion about an individual case, particularly with an individual child, that's something that we want to have offline. And again, we will provide you with the resources to follow up on that conversation. But we also want to keep this open, so I don't want to put too many guardrails on it. So let me start. Actually, I know there's going to be a lot of screen share, but I wrote down, as I was preparing for this, I wrote down some of my thoughts as I do. And as Joe was going through it, I thought, that makes a lot of sense to give people kind of a visual. So I'm going to share something, and we can just go through it together. And again, this is me kicking it off. This is me as a parent, and I want to use this as like a jumping off point for everybody else. So I'm a bit of a list maker at times. So when I look at like the kind of challenges that I know my family has dealt with, I think some of I've tried to describe them in somewhat universal terms. And I think that's, this is not meant to be comprehensive, but it could help spark some conversation among the group. So, it's just, this has been such a multi-level crisis. And I know for us at the very beginning, it was the fear of the virus itself, like getting it yourself, but also your family, your aging. My case, my parents are in their 70s. It's something that every single day until they got their second dose of the vaccine, it was on my mind. So I know that's something that everyone's had to deal with. But for kids too, having to explain to them the right amount of detail of the risk was always a challenge at the beginning. Explaining to them that it's something serious enough to completely change our life, but it's not so serious that you need to worry about it every waking minute of the day. There was especially early on, I found that to be a really difficult line to toe. And in the static noise in the background of all of these categories is, am I handling this the right way for my kids? And that's something I still don't know if, frankly, I'm doing. And I imagine it's probably the same for a lot of others. The second one there is pain of separation. I know seeing my daughter, she's in second grade, crying at night because I'm telling her she needs to get off the Messenger app because she's telling me this is the only way I can see my friends. Before you'd say to yourself, no screen time, right? But then screen time is the only way that they can have any connection to the outside world. As a parent, that has become a very difficult thing to navigate. And then the separation from routine has been so difficult. We don't think of that as a tangible thing, but we get so married to our routine that throwing that off has been difficult to deal with. I apologize in advance for my dog. There's something outside with four legs, I'm sure. So the next one is, the stress of working remotely. That's for both. A lot of these are parents and kids, that's been for them as well. And for kids, learning to accept new expectations has been, my daughter, she wants to do great on everything, but it's harder to learn when you're learning through lessons in a screen, and getting her to appreciate that, it's okay to be okay. It's okay to go easy on yourself, which is not something that I am, frankly, all that predisposed to a message that I enjoy giving. I like setting high expectations, but this is a year where we're completely recalibrating, and that's been a part of it. The residual stress of everyone being at home. This has been one of the paradoxes for me, where no one has their own space. So on one level, you've never been more personally lonely, but on the other side, you're literally never alone. It reminds me of my years of city living. That was always the paradox. You live in an apartment building, you're literally surrounded by people, but you feel intensely alone. And I think that's a good analogy for just what this pandemic has been for a lot of people. And then the fear and pain of instability. I mean, in my house, we've been lucky enough, no one has lost a job. But particularly early on, there was that fear, what is this going to mean? And having to shield your children from that stress created another level of stress, in its own right. And then the last one, the feeling that you're losing something that you'll never get back. This is the one that I think that we're still I know I'm still wrapping my head around. My oldest child is in second grade. So she has a lot of runway ahead of her. My younger child is 5. She's going to be in kindergarten. So, they still have a long runway as far as their school experiences. So I feel, they're lucky in that regard. I have a nephew who's an 18-year-old senior in high school. Ever since he was 8 years old, he wanted to play varsity baseball. And he was never the kind that was like, it was clear he was going to make it all the way. Like, he had to work for it. And he worked all throughout the first few years of high school. He made the team last spring, the day before lockdown restrictions went into place. Never got to put on the uniform, never got to play. Going into this year, didn't know if he was going to play. We still didn't really know until a month ago or so that sports statewide were going to happen. So I think of him as the example, and I don't have a high school child, in the school district, but I have him and I can see it through his eyes. And so I can only imagine that feeling that you're losing something that you will never get back. And how, these are formative years for our kids. And usually you can explain it away, but if somebody misses that varsity year, if somebody misses their final play, that's something that is a hole that is going to be there for the rest of their lives. And there are no easy words for that. And I know that, again, this is not I have the answers presentation. I'm trying to tee it up for all of you, but this is something that has, certainly been on my mind. And I think we've all been dealing with, and, those are my ways of kind of navigating it or breaking it down. And I know I've been ignoring the list here. So if, anybody else, certainly on the dais here, if you want to comment on that, or if anybody from the audience would like to chime in and add their own experiences. I know, this is maybe uncomfortable for some, but, feel free to do so.
I'm happy to talk about my students. So I have a son who graduated last June. So he was there at the beginning. He was a senior. The last 3 months of school were eradicated for him, and that he went fully remote. And then I have an older child also who went through Cornwall schools, and she is a junior in college. So last year she was a sophomore, also remote. And they have been remote for this past year. The thing that I kept telling my son and his friends too, during their last couple of months of high school, and I'm always trying to, say, give the perspective from, I'm a 50-year-old, I've been through the high school, I can tell you what happens after high school, and that life, there's still more to life that's hard to explain to a child who's 6, 7, 8, 18 years old, because they are in that moment. But one of the things that I would, make sure to tell them too is, okay, so your prom didn't happen, but there will be semi-formals, there will be friends' weddings down the road. You will have similar opportunities. Just because it doesn't happen in high school doesn't mean it will never happen. And we were talking about reunions, saying, your reunion, when this is all over, your 5th year reunion, whatever, make that your prom, make that a huge deal. So, I'm always trying to find from an adult perspective, looking in and saying, I know to you, sometimes it feels like this is it, there's just nothing else. But I can tell you that, I promise you that there is. And to always try and find that might be a little trivial or elementary, I guess. But I really found that just reminding them that that's the case and that they're going to be one of the most resilient bunch, because if they can go through something like this, come out on the other end, not only will they have stories to tell their kids and their grandkids, but this is a big deal. And to get through it means that obstacles in your future, you'll be able to weather them even easier because you have that experience. And the experience while you're going through it stinks, but that it will benefit you, long term. So that's kind of, helping the kids, and kind of having countdowns, like, okay, this is, yes, your junior year in college stinks because you haven't had a chance to see anybody or do anything. And my son's freshman year in college too, he's got to deal with housing now for next year, not having met a single person at the school that he goes to. He's the only one from Cornwall who's there. So, but I keep telling them the schools have that knowledge as well. So you'll see things now because of that, things that will be put in place that will be helpful for you. You're not going through this alone. Everybody's looking to make sure that everything is going to be okay, or at least, give you some kind of opportunity now that spring is here, and, the buds are out, and the horrible winter we had is gone, and, all the positives that I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I think sometimes that's a good thing, that they just need to have that security of, well, she's old, she's been through stuff, and she's saying it's going to be okay. So maybe I'll believe her just a little bit. I mean, I know she's my mom and she doesn't know anything anyway, but it's one of those things where I feel for these kids that are going through this. I really do. And, to try and remember back what it was like when you were in school, when you're 50 is, I have romantic visions of what my life was like back then. But, I give these kids a lot of credit. And the fact that we have these resources in the schools are fantastic. And, that we keep putting those out to people. So maybe they don't catch it the first time, but, with this recording going out, that we have the resources available as well there. So it's people who can, that it'll go out to everybody, and, that everybody gets a chance to see this over and over and really, really benefit, and make sure to reach out to the phenomenal counselors and everybody who are in the schools to help. If you were in the outside world, you'd be spending serious cash on this. And in this case, you don't have to. So that's a very great, great resource. So
we just got a chat. So I'll just go through this, and I have another parent submitted concern that I want to pass off as well. The one parent, elementary school parent, and elementary and middle school, is expressing concern about the amount of support that, in particular, middle school students are receiving, saying that she's hearing a lot about high school students on this presentation. And she feels like the middle school are the most overlooked and extremely at risk emotionally. Her son has never met his guidance counselor, and the support topics of mindful activities, meditation, self-care presentations, and SELs through his Google Classroom are topics that I'm hearing for the first time this evening. He's excelling academically, but I feel like his decline in motivation, sadness, and frustration are overlooked. Luckily, he comes from a very supportive family where his parents are home, income hasn't changed. If he's frustrated and struggling emotionally, I can only imagine other students of his age group who may not be so fortunate to have a parent home to help, or 3 meals a day on their plate. How are we identifying or helping these kids? Terry, Joe, I mean, I obviously, we want to make sure that we're following up with people individually if necessary. So, certainly this is a listening forum, but I want to offer you the chance to respond to that if however you feel fit.
The first thing that I kind of see that really was alarming for me, and I believe is Miss Lynch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Miss Lynch, I mean, if you wouldn't mind contacting me, because not meeting, your child not meeting your counselor, that's upsetting to me. So I just want to figure out if that's actually true. And, my number one goal is obviously get you connected right there. So, if you wouldn't mind messaging me, I can definitely take care of that for you. No problem, because that's number one. Because obviously if your child's struggling, I mean, that's step one, is to get them connected, with their counselor. So, And, a lot of times, so again, how you mentioned, like, that's your first time hearing about it. I have to remind parents sometimes it's like the old adage, like you ask your kids, like, how did school go? And they're like, good. What'd you do? Nothing. And I think they do some of these things, but they're small snippets. It may not be the overarching thing of their day. And in this hybrid environment that we're in, it's definitely even more so. So for instance, if we did SEL activities pre-COVID, we usually had maybe like a pre-activity, maybe a pre-assessment. We would do the activity and then we'd have a post-assessment. Sometimes it would take days in a classroom. Sometimes it might be during a health class. So again, if you could, like I said, message me and just let me know what grade level and everything like that. Because if we have to, I mean, again, then we'll probably target a little bit more within that grade level. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, just do a little information gathering. You're saying that he's excelling academically, but he's declining in motivation, sadness, and frustration. I have to say that is definitely like a common theme amongst a lot of our kids. And I think it has to do with, again, that lack of that normalcy, the lack of routine with school. So again, that's something that, his counselor can support with him though, just to make sure that he's supported and that he has somewhere to go. And you're talking about he's coming from a supportive family, things like that. That's obviously fantastic. But the other students of the other age groups. So the one thing, again, it's hard to, I kind of said this before, there's no portal that we have that shows you, if we didn't put in certain measures, what it could have looked like. We don't have the luxury as support staff people to show that. A lot of this stuff happens behind the curtains, behind the scenes. So kind of how you're saying, like, there may not be some students who are, that fortunate, like, how are we identifying? Trust me when I say we are, but do we ever feel like we have a hold on every single person? No, because things might change. I'll give you an example. Like, we had a family that we did not know that their entire family was infected with COVID and they could not do anything. They couldn't even get out of bed to help their kids and get meals. We didn't know that until they kind of told us, until a counselor reached out and said, hey, listen, like, I'm concerned, so-and-so hasn't been in school for a couple of days, anything we can do to help. And that's when they let us know. But then that's when the flood of resources can kind of come into play. But again, to the long and short of it is this. First step is this. I want to make sure you get connected with your child's counselor. And I want to have your child's counselor reach out to you and just give you an overview of kind of the things and the activities that do happen in the middle school. And again, then specific support. So again, the activities are kind of like a tier one. So that's like kind of a general, like, everybody gets, this kind of a lesson or an activity, but then there's, intensive stuff. So again, if it's motivation and things like that, that's something that we can help and identify. So I appreciate it. I look forward to you messaging me, and I'll actually type my email in the chat. So if anybody can, that would be great. And I would love to hear from everybody and I can help out. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And thank you, Ms. Lynch, as well. So this one also from the audience, from Victoria. For quarantine kids, is there a way to keep them engaged more while they're quarantined? And we're speaking particularly of middle schoolers. When my son was quarantined, my husband and I both were working, so not able to pay as close attention to his work as we should have, and he really didn't do well. Just wondering if more one-on-one check-ins could happen. I know this, quarantine is, it's sort of been the long tail issue with this pandemic that, certainly we've heard issues surrounding this at board meetings and, through direct conversations. So I know that this is something that is frustrating everyone. My daughter is currently in quarantine because of a proximity issue. So I certainly understand this issue deeply and personally. But Terry, Joe, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
Yeah, so when you're saying like a check-in, are you talking about kind of support staff from teachers? Like, is it an issue like where they're not connecting so much with their remote, like virtual, like the streaming lesson, or just trying to understand? All of it. Okay. Yeah, no, that's something like we can definitely work on and kind of, get going. The thing I think to understand too, so the before spring break, but emails, okay. before spring break, just talking about the high school specifically, we had 7 cases. We had approximately, Mr. Dade, how many students was it about? It was about 300.
100, yeah.
So it's about 300 and some odd students. So, it goes back to like the beginning of the year. I remember when parents were saying, how come I'm not getting a personal phone call about this quarantine? And I had to say, because we'd have to call 400 people. So it's like, it's about efficiency and safety first. But all of that though, like right there, like in terms of like, what can we do to check in and everything like that, that's something that we can work on. Quarantines are definitely, haven't wanted to bother teachers. I honestly, I don't think you're going to be a bother to teachers. I feel like teachers aren't hearing from, you know what I'm saying? Like as much as they used to, because everybody's kind of like in this mode of like, let's just get through this. But at the same time, that's something that we can definitely work on. Honestly, that's something I can make as a suggestion to say, if a kid's on a quarantine, so it's going to be 10 days, maybe in the middle of it, something goes out, or we just kind of say, hey, is there anything we could do to help you? How's it going? Anything like that. That's something we can work on. And that's like a K through 12 thing that we can work on. So it's definitely frustrating though, because it is sporadic. It happens from time to time, but I honestly don't ever feel bad about reaching out to teachers ever. We're all here for, and don't feel bad about reaching out to support staff. I'll say that for anybody. I mean, anytime someone reaches out, I would be more upset if I heard I reached out to support staff or I reached out to a teacher and I haven't heard back. That for me would be upsetting. But if, we don't know, sometimes we don't know because of, again, I think this exposure, that this lack of that in-person or that face-to-face. So, but that's something we definitely can work on.
Great. Okay, I have another, this one was emailed to me, so I'll just read it out to the group. The emailer preferred to be anonymous, so just I'll gloss over any of those details. But a parent of both current students and alumni, and overall, my children have received a good education here in Cornwall Central School District. The one area that I have found consistently lacking is the ability for the middle school and high school faculty and staff to understand mental health issues and support students dealing with those issues. Both of my current high school students have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Both have been on medication at some points, and currently they're both lucky enough to have great therapists outside of school. My senior is also autistic and has ADHD, but has not been able to receive proper supports because they don't have significant enough academic deficits. As you can imagine, that contributes to their poor mental health. I am very encouraged that the school board is devoting time to focusing on this. The guidance department at the high school has been a wonderful resource for both of my children. Both of them have been able to just pop in and chat about their anxieties or get refuge from a loud and chaotic classroom. It goes on to, I don't want to mention specific names, but it's all very supportive and saying that the guidance department has been a source of great assistance. Unfortunately, the one area where I have encountered the least support is in the actual classroom. So most teachers I've encountered don't have a proper understanding of how depression can affect a student's classroom performance and why they need to adjust their expectations temporarily. So that seems the theme there is that the guidance department is doing a great job, but could it be woven more into, I guess, the fabric of the lessons themselves, or at least the way that the teachers are dealing with students directly. I know this is a great contribution because it's touching on a theme, and I mean we're not talking about specific teachers here, so we don't want to go through it. But I think that for us as a board and for an administration, that's certainly a valid piece of input and something that we can certainly take to heart.
And this is where I would just say, our best work is when we work together as a team. So an example would be a CSE meeting where you have teachers, special education experts, counselors, administration, all sitting together to say, what do we need to provide this student to make sure that he or she is successful. So this other example is a prime example of, if there's a concern that either the teacher sees or the parent sees, I would hope that we would all come together to really sit down and figure out what is needed in the classroom, what could be provided by way of support outside of the classroom, to make sure the child's getting what they need. So the siloed approach is tough because the teachers are really focused on a myriad of things all at once. And at the high school and middle school level, we know too well that there's literally hundreds of students that they could see each and every day. So not to downplay the role of a teacher, it's just that our teachers work on a team where we rely on parents, counselors, psychologists, administration really to all work together. So as we come out of COVID, you know, some of those team meetings will come back much more regularly where we can actually have those conversations where a student is brought up of concern, and every single school has a team in place that they would meet to talk about specifics, what comes next, and develop a plan where the parent would be right there with them. So that would be our expectation. Again, if there's ever a problem where someone's not feeling that they're getting what they need for their child, reach out to admin, reach out to a counselor, reach out to Mr. DeBold, and we'll make sure that we get a sit down to discuss further.
Yeah, I would, you know, I don't have anything different to add to that. You know, one thing that we want to encourage from this forum, this event, is to let people know, not only, I mean, the fact that we're having this event, I think shows that, you know, this is a serious issue for us as a district. And, you know, I totally understand why some, you know, you may not feel comfortable speaking your or sharing your concerns here, but the door is completely open. And this is something that I know Mr. DeBold was talking about before, and also to us. I mean, everyone should feel empowered to bring their any issue, whether it's a student or a parent who's concerned about the support their student is getting. You know, these are difficult conversations to start, you know, but once they get started, it typically gets easier from there, you know. So and that's across mental health. There's even I'm in advertising, so I see a lot of these things, but there's a campaign, Seize the Awkward. You know, these are very difficult conversations to begin, but once you lean into them, I think a lot of people will find that there's probably more resources available than you realized, and the conversations themselves are more productive than perhaps you even hope for.
And I'd just like to emphasize, you know, as we're talking about all this, you know, Mr. DeVolt had used the analogy of the storm, and we're still in the storm, but I think the charts that you put up were very telling in terms of the fact that, you know, there can be a long tail on everything we're going through right now. So if people are maybe not even you know, everybody's experiencing something that's negative out of this pandemic, but you know, if you're not seeing specific signs at this point in time, there's, you know, those resources are all at the school level, and you know, at guidance level in terms of helping kids if it's not happening now and maybe it's happening in September, etc. You know, my children are, you know, not in school any longer. They both graduated from college about 2 years ago, but everybody's experiencing this in a different way. And, you know, some of it, I think people on a mental health basis sometimes aren't really knowing what's impacting them. Sometimes it hits you after the fact. So I just really encourage around what we're talking about tonight, that there's you know, we know there's a long-term view to it, and those resources are there.
I couldn't agree more, Nina. I think that you're totally right in that we don't, you know, sometimes I mean, physiologically, even that's how it works. You know, you get a pain somewhere. It could be stress that you were experiencing 2 days ago, you know, and I think that you expand that out to the effects that COVID is going to have. This is something that is at least going to stretch into next year, if not going to be static noise in the background of our kids, you know, the duration of their childhood and even into their adulthood. So, and across the board, and I'll preface everything with, I am not a mental health expert, but in all the reading that I've done, every situation, no matter what the malady or event is, the earlier a child can get support and the closer they can get it from family out, the better outcomes that they have. So, certainly the school is ready to play its role in that. I want to move to one more follow-up from Victoria. So as a parent, I'm sure I'm not the only one worried about the increased screen time, especially after watching Screenagers last year, which I did not see, but I'm assuming it is a documentary. But is there a plan at all for the district to discuss screen time usage again come fall? I wouldn't do it now, but I think a reset might be needed, especially for older kids. I mean, I mentioned that myself, it is something that I've been thinking about too as a parent, like you've surviving off of screens for a full 12 months with your kids, socially and academically. It is a concern. Like, how do we wean them off of this in a way that works, but also, as a parent, you don't lose credibility either, because you've been telling them one thing and now you're backtracking on this. I mean, I'll open that up to, frankly, anybody on this panel if they have a response to that.
So from a district perspective, I mean, we're still going to have to wait to see what reopening looks like for next year, and this will be something we absolutely take into consideration. But like Mr. Carty said, when you talk about partnership, this is not a school district specific issue. When our kids leave the building, screen time rules and what appropriate screen time is from family to family is as wide array as you can imagine. So we'll do our part from the district perspective to think about reopening and what screen time looks like during the school day. But when we talk about a community issue and family specific issue, we really have to think about this as a partnership.
Yeah, just one of the example I want to give is talking to some high school students, and just, we were trying to get together some activity to do. And I asked them, I said, okay, do you guys want to in person or on, and I couldn't even get the words out. They were like, in person, because they're just done, so again, I do see elements of that, because as much as we make fun of them to say, oh, they're just glued to a screen. Yes, if it's social in nature or something like that, but if it is kind of like a task oriented thing, they're kind of like, yeah, I want to be in person, and I want to do it off the screen. I just feel like it's just, better. I agree. Screenagers was, definitely very, very powerful in showing like how it actually changes, students' brains. And like that kind of that reward system and so on and so forth. And I think, though, kind of what Mr. Date said, one of the things that I took from Screenagers was the family contract. They included their students in it, and they said, hey, if you want this, here's the rules and regulations, but now you're a part of the contract. So if they're a part of it, as long as you make them a part of that contract, then they feel empowered to say, okay, well, hey, I made this decision, in lockstep, what I mean? So I agreed to these terms. Now, again, that works a little bit with older, students, not necessarily your younger ones. But I see it with, my 4-year-old. My 4-year-old, we very, very much limit screen time because, it's early in their years. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. My 4-year-old, if he gets like a half hour of screen time and I'm like, okay, half hour's up, and I shut it off, I mean, it's World War III. Like, he's like, no, and how could you do this? And, it's like, oh, wow. So I definitely see, that effect. But again, I just think about it in terms of two different ways, though. So it's sometimes, and kind of like Mr. Carty said, that's sometimes a student's lifeline to their education, to their socialization, to things like that. So I think it's about balance. I think is it the screen time that's happening after 1 a.m. And they're not getting sleep, and now they're in a vicious cycle of, not getting sleep. Now they're becoming like literally nocturnal because of the screen, or is it screen time that is within a frame that families agree on, everybody agrees on, and it's productive. You are on there because you're researching something. You're on there because you are having a nice conversation with a friend, something like that. So, but I will say this, though, teachers are very mindful about the screen time. And I will say, especially during the spring, because it was strictly remote for everybody, I think a lot of times teachers kind of did say, hey, here's your activity, get outside, do this, so phys ed, especially phys ed, it's funny for them because they're like, we're going to do your warm-up activity on maybe the screen, but then you're going to go away, you know what I mean, and then report back. So, so yeah, I hear you with that. I mean, that's definitely something that is a balance. I mean, I think that's the best way to say it. So.
And Joe, I would follow up with just observations and more as a parent. I think that you're onto something with kids now appreciating what in person really means and the value of that. And that could be an unintended positive consequence of this. I think people in general understanding the value of personal connection more than they probably did before. I certainly don't ever claim to be a parenting expert, but when I look at the kids, I don't even want to say obsession with screen time. I mean, screens are designed by people with extensive training to make kids obsessed with them. I mean, that's literally the whole point. I mean, it follows the same logic of casinos and slot machines. But so they are very dangerous things. I always look at it like, my wife always gets very concerned. Oh, they're too into the screens, even if they're too into a show. How kids will watch 100 episodes of one thing before they move on to something else. I always say I love finding what they really love, because then as a parent, that gives me leverage to get them to do the things that I want them to do. So identifying that can give you a tactical advantage. And I paused even mentioning that because I don't want this to be, this is the Board of Education's recommendation for, parenting techniques. But look, we are all, as parents, we're all dealing with this issue. And I think that talking about it can be helpful. I certainly like hearing how other parents are managing it, because, God knows I don't have all the answers. I don't think any of us do, but we can certainly try to just learn from one another. Okay. Want to put out a request to or see if anybody just has any questions that they want to ask or concerns they want to bring up. Certainly the chat function is there if you don't want to be on screen. If you do, you can again raise your hand. I could bring you into the discussion. Again, if people are more content to listen, that's fine. I'll remind everyone that we'll be putting the initial presentation on our Facebook page. So there was so much in there as far as resources. And I think being able to review that, slow it down and focus on the part that is relevant to your child would be very helpful, because there are a lot of resources through the school district that I think that a lot of parents are not aware of. And as Mr. DeBold has said, that these are not the kinds of things that kids will probably volunteer themselves. So I think knowing what resources are available will help you, is the first step towards taking advantage of them, obviously. So I encourage you to look through that presentation once we have it posted. But if no one else has any questions or input, I mean, we can wrap up. I don't want anybody who is holding on to a concern to feel like they missed their shot. So certainly want to give anyone the chance to raise their hand or chime in on the chat. But if not, I guess we can.
I think Brendan
go for closing comments. Go ahead.
One other thing I just wanted to mention is it's, children probably are somewhat aware, through being in school of resources, but as a parent too, to make your children aware of the resources, because sometimes they'll go and I don't know, I'm not obviously a psychologist or whatever, but sometimes kids go to talk to somebody else about something because of whatever emotions they have around it. So it's great if people can make certain that their kids know that from them that these resources exist. Certainly the school district tries to make the kids aware, but it's good for them to know that they're there.
Absolutely, Nina. And I think part of it is empowering kids to seek out that assistance if they need it themselves. I mean, it's, we have 3,000 kids in our school district. We have a great staff, but we don't have nobody has the capacity to look inside a kid's mind or a kid's heart. I mean, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine the vast majority of cases in which a student receives help are instigated by that student. There are going to be some cases where you recognize, certain signs, but it's going to be somehow the student presents that and reaches out for it. And I think you're right, Nina. If a parent knows what resources are available, they can encourage their child to get access them directly if that's the most productive way for them to get them. So I think that's a great point as well.
Right. And I think the key word again is just collaboration. Again, if you are noticing certain patterns at home, they may not be consistent with what we see here, but if they are, then yes, then that's the time for action. It's the time we work together. So for instance, we've had lots of parents say, hey, my kid is again staying up all night and trying to sleep all day during their remote days and so on and so forth. It's a pain to get them to get up. And the one thing that we could also say though is we ask follow-up questions, and the follow-up questions that we ask are related to depression. So we say, what about this? What about that? So if they are identifying that, then we kind of say, I think it's time that you meet with a healthcare provider. I think it's time that our school psychologist meets with them, so on and so forth. So there's then that wraparound. Again, though, like Mr. Carty said, the one thing that makes me feel good is when students do come in and say, I am hurting bad, because that's a good sign that there's a connection there. If that wasn't happening, then I would be alarmed. Then I would say, then we need to do a better job of connecting with our students. Now, let me also say this pandemic and hybrid schedule and everything like that has definitely not allowed that level of connection we have had in the past. That's the work that we're going to do. So I'll give you an example. There's talk already and ideas of when we have freshman orientation, guess who else is going to be probably coming to freshman orientation? 10th graders. They haven't stepped foot in the building, some of them, so again, the medically remote students. So we want to offer that out to students and families to say, hey, you didn't get an opportunity last time, but now is your opportunity. So again, if they're still remaining on medical remote, but again, I think it's more about, getting what they need, and also asking a question because it may not be a support staff member. It may be a coach. It may be a teacher. It may be somebody like that they connect with, and that is their adult that they connect with. And those are our eyes and ears. And that's why, in one of the slides I had, it said critical events supported by our schools, not support staff. Support staff is a piece of it, but it's the teachers, it's custodians, it's bus drivers, it's cafeteria workers, it's TAs, it's everybody. Everybody has eyes and ears and wrap around with these kids. So I just want to make sure that I hammer that home. It is all of us as a staff. And the one thing I always say is it's us against this virus. It's not factions pointed at you or you. It's us literally together against this virus through this same exact storm. Again, different boats, different needs, but same storm. So I think that once we collaborate and we kind of say, hey, this is what I'm noticing, what can we do? And we say, hey, this is, some solutions, or here's how you can help. Then great, then we're doing everything we can. So again, I just want to make sure that collaboration is the key. Let us know, and we will do anything it takes, to make sure your kid is healthy and safe, and especially for the years to come. I also want to mention that is definitely, if the fall looks like, hey, we returned, everybody's, back, yay, everyone. It's yay, but it's also a sense of, okay, so who is coming with what? There's going to be baggage. There's going to be needs. There's going to be things that we need to identify. There's going to be things that we need to educate. You mentioned that email about the staff. There's going to have to be a lot of education about trauma-informed practice. Teachers are going to have to identify. They've gone through it before, but even more so now that it's going to have to happen in terms of that professional development. So that's just part of the puzzle about, figuring out who needs what. But again, I think the number one thing is they're in person, they're in front of us, and we have them. So we can collect them if they do have a breakdown, they're in class and just something hits them, we're there. And it's so different and frustrating now when they're home and that's experienced that, what I mean? And their parents may be at work. I mean, that is troublesome for us as a school. So again, the efforts to get them back, where we have our hands on them, and to literally be able to have that genuine connection with them, that is what we're looking forward to. But as parents, this is what I want to make sure I hammer this home. You're our eyes and ears, because the majority of time they are, under your roof, and you guys, know all the different things about your kid that you can help clue us in. And if you are unsure, if you're saying, I'm not sure, maybe my kid is just lazy, maybe they are just a slug, or maybe it might be something else and I'm just concerned. Let us know, let your child's counselor know, and we definitely can help you out decipher through the different things there.
Great. Yeah, and just to kind of wrap on a positive note here, I do think we've talked for almost a year, just as a society at large about what are the things that we're going to learn from COVID, what are the things that we're going to take with us afterwards, and I really think the mental health discussion is now going to be as normal as anything else. This is, for years, I think we'd been slowly getting to the point where we were destigmatizing mental health. And I think this is going to put this issue front and center. And it's certainly not the last time we're going to talk about it as a board or as a district. So certainly feel empowered to follow up on these conversations in the months and years to come, because I think there will be, you'll have a lot of listening ears when you do so. Okay, I think we are probably wrapped from the audience. I have not seen any new comments or anything coming in. So I would, if something comes to mind or you have something that you want to ask and just haven't been able to articulate it yet, you can certainly, I know my email has been on all of the communication. You can reach out to me and I can pass it on to Mr. DeBold or Mr. Dade. Joe has shared his email address in the chat. So if something would be more relevant to go directly to him, please feel free to do so. I want to thank everybody for attending tonight, everybody who asked questions, offered their input. I think this is such an important conversation, and hopefully the first of several. And if you've been wondering about Mr. DeBold's light, he has a very energy efficient system in his room. It goes dark when he doesn't move, and because Joe's doing his part for the planet. But anyway, thank you everybody for all the participants. Thank you everybody on this panel. We will have the presentation on our Facebook page once it's ready, and anybody can review that afterwards at their leisure. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll be talking to you in the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.